Tonight, we look back at two conference championship games that demonstrated how one man, the head coach, can decide a game and a season. We'll also look ahead to Super Bowl 58 and two very different quarterback resumes. Sal Paolantonio, Ross Tucker, Sean Green will join me to talk postseason NFL football and Eagles offseason. It's all right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Welcome, everybody, to a Super Bowl pregame edition of This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you. I'll be joined by, of course, the great Sal Paolantonio in just a few minutes. I have a million things to go through with Sal. Sean Green will join me at the bottom of the hour to talk some early Super Bowl props. And then Ross Tucker from Westwood One and the Ross Tucker Football Podcast will join me at the top of the hour. Welcoming Ross to the stable of This Week in Pro Football guests. And we'll talk about the Super Bowl with Ross and the take he can give to being on an NFL sideline when it all starts going wrong. And it all did go wrong for the Detroit Lions last week. And we're going to touch on that with Sal. We're going to talk about just really the distilled greatness that is Patrick Mahomes. But this kid, Brock Purdy, Sal's going to talk about that too. There is something. I don't like the 49ers at all, but there is something special about this kid, the very last pick in the NFL draft. We'll get to that. Dan Quinn, fresh off a 48-point thrashing from the Green Bay Packers, is named the head coach of the Washington Commanders. I think a pretty nondescript hire. And all the coaching jobs are now filled, and Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick, the two most desired and sought after and biggest names in the coaching fraternity when the search started for the 7 teams, are still on the sidelines. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? That'll make for an interesting offseason. We'll see if either one ends up with a team in any capacity in the offseason. But look, we're going to spend tonight talking about the championship, the conference games, because they were fascinating, I thought. And they did speak to me to how coaches, Bill Parcells, one of his famous remarks about it's not about the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. True to a very large extent, but a coach can still put his thumb on the scale. And what I thought was fascinating, and I'm going to talk to Sal about, is John Harbaugh spent all season making sure the Baltimore Ravens were number 1 in the NFL in rushing attempts and rushing yards. And he proceeded to completely walk from the running game in the AFC Championship game. Conversely, Dan Campbell pulled the Jim Fregosi. Oh, we all remember the night. Well, not some of you may not. Many of us older coots remember the 1993 Phillies, in which Fregosi sent Mitch Williams out to pitch to Joe Carter. And the whole Phillies team, especially Kurt Schilling, knew what was coming. But Fregosi's answer, well, he's the guy who got us here. We danced with who brung us. Okay. That's what Campbell did in terms of the decisions that he made in that game. We'll talk to Sal about that too. So just fascinating how those decisions that a coach makes. You have 25 assistants, you have 50 players, you got the officials, you got the home field, but it's one guy who's going to make an outsized imprint on what happens in a game, especially a conference championship game. And I thought they both did it last week. The incomparable Andy Reid, too. Reid and Mahomes. If time permits, I'm going to ask Sal about the best coach-quarterback combinations in NFL history. These guys are right at the top. Some of Mahomes' statistics are just staggering for what this guy has accomplished. Xander, let's get this guy in here, the host of the NFL Matchup Show. A man who's going to be very busy for the next week out in Las Vegas, and that's the great Sal Paolantonio. Sal, how are you today?
Oh, we're getting ready to go to Las Vegas. I'll be embedded with those San Francisco 49ers. I'm always one of the 2 reporters who cover a Super Bowl team. Last year, of course, I was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Been with the Eagles. Been with the Eagles 3 times. Once with Andy Reid, once with Doug Peterson, once with Nick Sirianni. And those weeks are extremely memorable and very busy and a lot of hard work. When you're with a team that you haven't really covered all year long, like the Niners, it's completely different. You're learning personalities on the fly. It's even more challenging than you can imagine.
I would guess so, Sal. I guess so. I hope that wasn't your choice to pick the 49ers, but that will be an interesting week for you.
Yeah, so Pat, I always like to say prospective people who come to ESPN who are just arriving, during the year, once in a while, you get to play quarterback.
Right.
When you go to the Super Bowl and we have 160 people there, you're a left guard. That's all you are. You're just you're the left guard. You're part of the team. You show up, you do your job, you stay in your lane. It's assignment football all week long. That's what it is.
Just do your job. That's it. Do your
assignment football, as we like to say.
All right, Sal Pal, let's get going. Okay, I want to start with this. I want to look back with you on those 2 conference championship games, and then we're going to look ahead to the Super Bowl. But just get some take from you, and we'll start with the game that you were at. Okay, which was Kansas City and the absolutely formidable duo of Andy Reid and Patty Mahomes. And I guess I shouldn't neglect Steve Spagnuolo for the job he has done as defensive coordinator at Baltimore against the Ravens team that had just pounded the rock all season long. Just explain to me and everybody watching tonight, how does a team go from leading the league in rushing to running the ball 6 times from its running backs in a conference championship game?
Okie doke. What happened was that Steve Spagnuolo baited Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson into throwing the football. That was the defensive alignment that he showed them. He was very heavy in the box. He had safeties nosing down the line of scrimmage. His alignment was just designed to stop the run. And, initially they had very little success running the ball, and they gave up on it. I'm not a believer in giving up on it.
Right.
You have to impose your will at home with your best players. That's 1. 2, you didn't have Lamar Jackson on the edges when he was throwing. He was in the pocket.
Right.
He's not a pocket passer. You had him drop back to pass 82% of the time. That was the most ever in his career in a single game, highest percentage ever. And that was it. I said to one of my producers after the Chiefs were up beginning of the game, this game is over. Lamar Jackson's not built to come back. This offense is not built to come back. When Lamar Jackson is down by double digits at halftime, he is 0-5. 0-5 in his career. Double digits at halftime. 3 of those by the Kansas City Chiefs.
There you go, Sal. And you point out to me the notes you sent to me. Ravens points per game with Lamar, regular season 28.3, postseason 16. Now, there was a lot of talk, a lot of it from me, about Lamar and the postseason and the fact that he has not shown it. Well, he certainly didn't show it again last week. Just give me a quick take on Lamar Jackson and where he goes from here. Does he now have to just waste the next 18 weeks of NFL football in 2024 just to get back and try and prove it again?
Well, Pat, I'd like to be clear about this in answer to a question. In my view, Lamar was not the main problem. There were some issues with him, obviously throwing that interception in the end zone in the 4th quarter into triple coverage was a huge, huge mistake. Definitely.
Right.
They had a bad plan, and they stuck to it. At some point at halftime, John Harbaugh's got to go to Todd Monken and say, get my quarterback out of the pocket. Get him on the run. Challenge this defense with Lamar Jackson running. Going into the game, Steve Spagnuolo and his defense in Kansas City in his tenure has given up 26 touchdowns to running quarterbacks, most in the NFL during his tenure. I mean, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
It was a bad plan, and they stuck to the bad plan.
We were taught in military,
training school at the Navy War College where I took a course that, people get so stuck on an idea that it's going to work that they get divorced from reality. Don't do that. Be adaptable. Be willing to change. If you don't, you're going to fail. You're going to fail on the battlefield. You're going to fail in the football field.
All right, Sal, you kind of answered this question, but I'm going to throw it out anyway because I want you to expound on it a little more. Head coaches wear a headset, right? Remember the old days, John Madden didn't, Tom Landry didn't.
And John Harbaugh is listening to the play call.
Yes. And you mentioned halftime, but at any time during that game, Harbaugh has to see that his offensive coordinator is, and he knew it. He had to know it from game planning, like you're saying.
Yeah.
The Ravens proceeded to do last week that which they had not done all season long.
I'm not blaming this on Lamar Jackson. I'm blaming it squarely on the coaching staff. I am in agreement with you 100%. Bad plan, and they stuck to a bad plan. Absolutely.
That's just a great way of putting it. It was a bad plan, and they stuck to it, which is fascinating. Okay? Now, let's segue then to the NFC Championship game then, where, Sal, I guess – I'm going to take your phrase. Dan Campbell had a plan all season long, which was I'm Riverboat Dan. I'm going for it on 4th and 2. That's
Gambling Campbell. Campbell. Yeah, okay. That's the nickname.
Sal, just tell me this. I'm going to tell you the three things. 1, 24-7 at half. The Niners kick a field goal. Lions come right back, running the ball, which they too got away from. They're in field goal position, 4th and 2. Should he kick the field goal there to possibly go back up 3 scores?
And the overwhelming consensus in the NFL community, people like Phil Simms, others that I've heard on the radio, on Sirius XM, and on TV analysis, the overwhelming consensus is you kick the field goal. Yeah. It's not even close.
Yeah.
We're talking about, the borough of Manhattan voting Democrat, 97%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then Sal, 27-24. You've totally lost the lead. You were up 24-7. Now you're down 27-24. You're presented with the same circumstance. You've got to kick that field goal. It's the NFC Championship game. You're not playing the Bears in October at Soldier Field. This is the NFC Championship game. Tie the game. Yes or no?
Yeah, the people are consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, as we like to say. And I'm not saying that Dan Campbell has a little mind. I think consistency is the hobgoblin of small plans. So you have to manage in the big moment,
right?
As if it's a big moment, not a small moment. You're not managing a week 8 game.
You got it.
And you don't have to worry that your team is going to buy in. They have already bought in a big way to you and your coaching style and your philosophy. That's the reason why you're in the NFC Championship game. That's the reason why you have turned things around so disproportionately to anybody that anybody's ever seen in the National Football League, because they are already bought in. So you don't have to worry about saying, all right, we've been doing one thing all the way up to this point, but I think in this situation, we should do this. And you're not going to get second guessed.
There you go. There you go. And the last one, Sal, drives me crazy. It does. And Mike Greenberg, if you watched the Get Up on Monday morning on ESPN, he was absolutely he was explosive about it. The Lions are down 34-24 late in the game. There's over a minute to go. They have 3 timeouts left. First down inside at the San Francisco 3-yard line. He runs the ball. Now, God help me. If I was a Lions fan, the TV would have been rolling out onto my street, because in doing that, he had to take a timeout there, which then committed him to an onside kick, which, as Greenberg pointed out, just doesn't work anymore. It's almost a 100% chance it's not going to work.
It was a bad idea. It was bad. But, I think I would like to flip the script. I think all of us are guilty of belaboring this point. I think Kyle Shanahan finally learned something about how to manage his offense in big games. Specifically, he's got a running back who is a hammer in Christian McCaffrey.
He sure does, Sal. He sure does.
Okay, so Christian McCaffrey in the 2 postseason games has 260 all-purpose yards, scrimmage yards, and 4 touchdowns. And in the 18 games he has played, 18 games he's played this year, he has 25 touchdowns. That's insane production. And it shows that Kyle Shanahan, who made a mistake 4 years ago when he had Garoppolo,
right,
and he made a mistake when he was the offensive coordinator under Dan Quinn in Atlanta when it was 28-3 and he didn't run the ball. I think that should be very encouraging to those people who think that he is finally getting it and may get over the hump against the Chiefs. Maybe. Right. Right. This game, to me, in the Super Bowl, I'm getting ahead of myself, is Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator of the Niners,
right,
trying to outcoach Andy Reid.
Yeah. That'll be a fascinating one. Yeah, that's going to be fascinating.
As Ron Jaworski once told me, Pat, coaches in the NFL coach against coaches. They look at their tendencies. They look at their contingencies. They look at their plans B, C, and D, depending on what you throw at them. And I'm telling you right now, the way I study it and the way I look at it, Andy Reid is going to, and I said this last week and he did it last week, he's going to run Isaiah Pacheco on the edges he did it. He got Queen and he got Roquan Smith outside the numbers.
Right.
And he's going to do that against San Francisco. He's going to run right at their defensive ends. That's
going to be fascinating. I think one of those defensive ends might get benched, Chase Young. I think the Commanders stole a 3rd-round pick when they made that deal, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Oh, you are correct. You are right.
When we get back with Sal Paolantonio, I'm going to ask Sal about analytics. I'm almost sick of the term. I just want to get Sal's take on analytics. I
love analytics. All right, let's go, Pat. We're ready. Come on,
you're a Navy man. Okay, I get it.
I love analytics.
I'm going to ask him about that. I'm going to ask him, did the 49ers actually dodge a bullet with the 2 teams that they played in the playoffs? And then we're going to talk about Kellen Moore and a couple of Eagles notes here as we rumble into the postseason. We got to do that all next here on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Celebrate your victories in style at Spring Mill Country Club. From Eagles wins to baby showers, weddings to birthdays, our picturesque venue is ready to host your special events. Make memories that last a lifetime in our stunning surroundings. Call Spring Mill today at 215-675-6000 and elevate your next event to unforgettable heights. Contact us now to book 215-675-6000.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Welcome back. This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford, the great Sal Paolantonio, my guest here, the host of the NFL Matchup Show, and a man who's going to be embedded with the hated San Francisco 49ers. That's just me talking now. I mean, a lot of people love the 49ers. I don't. But I'm sure I'll probably like him a lot more when Sal's done with him, but we'll see about that. But Sal, one word about that. The Niners faced the Green Bay Packers in their initial playoff game, and they faced the Detroit Lions. 2 very young teams and not a lot of playoff pedigree on either team in terms of their current roster. Both had the Niners on the ropes. You think San Francisco, did they dodge a big bullet there, and did they learn from it, in your opinion?
I do. I do think they learned from it. I think you can definitely see that Kyle Shanahan is focusing on Christian McCaffrey, and you can definitely see that Brock Purdy is developing his pedigree in the postseason. You know, he has had 2 second halves, one against the Packers and one against the Lions, and he has had 8 scoring drives out of 10 possible drives in those second halves, 80%. So, you know, that's pretty phenomenal. That's outrageously good. So don't knock Brock. That's my That's my saying for Super Bowl 58. Don't knock Brock. You know, he represents 74% of the Niners offense in the postseason. Now, 4 years ago, when they went to the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, Jimmy Garoppolo represented 29% versus 74%. So that's a significant upgrade.
I know.
It is a significant upgrade at the quarterback position. The problem is Steve Spagnuolo now in his 5th Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. He's only lost 1. And he is diabolically good at making you do what you don't want to do. See, this is the thing that that's the value of a defensive coordinator. Is putting in a plan and players in a position to make the quarterback do what he does not want to do. Excellent. And the job of the quarterback is to simply get out of the bad plays, the bad situation that the defensive coordinator has put. That's what Peyton Manning did. That's what Tom Brady did. That's what Montana, Aikman, Bradshaw, all the greats have done. Mahomes is perhaps the greatest.
He might be, Sal. But I tell you, this kid Purdy, and I tell you, as I said, I'm no Niners fan, but this kid's got that Montana. I am not saying he's Joe Montana. I'm just saying he's got that sixth sense about him in the pocket. You can see it, and it's only going to get more developed.
Well, the other thing, too, is he knows when to run. This is different, though. Anzalone, the linebacker, was 20 yards off the line of scrimmage spying Brock Purdy, Pat. He was too far off the line of scrimmage. And as we saw against the Ravens, they had a double-stack spy against Lamar Jackson, which forced him to pass the football, to stay in the pocket. He saw that double-stack spy, and he didn't get out of it. Purdy will be spotted. He will.
All right. Maybe the analytics told Angeloni to wait to be 20 yards away from the line of scrimmage. Just give me your thoughts on this, Sal. It's a term that has come. It's not. I'm not saying it's dominating pro football, but it's showing up way too much. Give me your overall thoughts on it. This reliance by coaching staffs on statistical history and tendencies. Do you think it's been a boon for the game, or do you think perhaps it's a little bit of a drag on a coach making decisions based on what's going on right in front of his face?
Listen, and it doesn't matter what it is, in any walk of life, you take analytics, you take all the information that is given by your subordinates, and you give it to the CEO, and the CEO at the end has to make a decision whether it works or not. The reliance on analytics, I think, is working on 4th down for the most part. It didn't work with Detroit. He over-relied on it. In the end, whoever the CEO is, whoever the decision maker is, whoever the head coach or the quarterback on the field must rely on what they see and then instinctually react to it.
Yeah.
And if you take the analytics, that's all fine and well and good, but you can't be a slave to one aspect of any. Pat, when you were a CFO, did you adhere to one specific philosophy or strategy? No, you took in a whole lot of things. You crunched the numbers,
right,
and then you saw what the trends were, and then you made decisions based on your experience and the information given to you. So I like it, analytics. I do, but I don't like the over-reliance on it. I like the fact that you have coaching staffs that are now like 24 and 25. You know, you have a large number of people giving you information. They have those chips that they use to give information. There's a lot of stuff. The next gen stats do work. Like, for instance, the Next Jet Stats shows that the Niners are not very good at covering tight ends over the season. They were 29th in the league. And what happened? Sam Laporta went off on them.
Yeah.
He had one bad drop.
Yeah.
So if you put that in there, ipso facto, to say you're saying, all right,
I understand you.
Travis Kelce, that's your guy in this game.
Yeah. But you know what, Sal? Back in Super Bowl 48, the Seattle Seahawks were inside. They'd gotten down to the 2-yard line of the Patriots and were about to win that game.
That's the best example.
And the Patriots had 3 timeouts, Sal. But I'm not going to give you the example you're thinking of, I don't think.
No, Belichick didn't call timeout.
Exactly. Analytics would scream to Belichick to call a timeout there. Instead, he said, I was looking at their sideline, and they seemed a little confused. So I figured I'd just let it play out. That is the best example of a coach looking at the circumstance right there and making a decision as opposed to, analytics. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a very good one. Of course, the Seahawks conspired to help Belichick.
I don't deny that. They bailed him out. You're right.
They bailed him out for sure. Yeah. But, and the much maligned Matt Patricia was the one who came up with the defensive call that allowed Malcolm Butler to jump the route and intercept Russell Wilson and give Tom Brady a Super Bowl title.
I know. All right, Sal, you only have 3 minutes left here. I could talk to you all night long. 3 minutes left. Give me your quick take. Last week, you had some excellent opinions on the Eagles and their offensive coordinator hire. The Eagles end up with Kellen Moore, who was in the same job last year with the Los Angeles Chargers. Moore now comes east with Philadelphia. Give me your take on that.
Well, I advocated for something bold like Cliff Kingsbury, but he's a very polarizing figure, obviously, as you saw from the commentary that my comments generated.
That's true.
Kellen Moore, what he did with Dak Prescott a couple of years ago when he let him loose and he threw for over 4,000 yards was pretty impressive for sure. And they decided they wanted to run the ball and be a little bit more conservative. And where did it get them? Right back where they were. So let's see what Kellen Moore is going to come in here. He likes to throw the ball downfield. He likes to be aggressive. I was interested to see what Devontae Smith said on Kay Adams' podcast recently. You can look it up on YouTube, in which he said, just let us do our thing, which suggests we should see a lot more of those kinds of passes that are going to be, catered to for A.J. Brown, crossing routes, deep in digs, those kinds of things. For Devontae Smith, let him win those one-on-one matchups. His hands are so reliable. When the ball is in the area, he beats the defender to the ball all the time. Create one-on-one matchups. Allow Dallas Goedert to work underneath and clear things out. I mean, there's talent, but I'm going to go back to what I said last week, Pat. If you're not going to have Jason Kelce, that's a big missing piece. Right. It is a huge missing piece on this team. He was an extra coach on the field, and in my view, one of the best centers of all time and going to the Hall of Fame. That's a big missing piece.
That is the big. You're right about that, and then there's other pieces on that offensive line, like Lane Johnson, not getting any younger either.
But Kelce called the protection. Yeah. Kelce was the guy. He was the godfather, right? Lane Johnson. When you have a middle linebacker or a center or a safety like Dawkins, you guys in the middle of the field, they see the whole field. They know what's going on back and front. It's like a catcher,
right? It's
like Tim McCarver or Yogi Berra or Johnny Bench. So there's a reason why catchers become great managers in baseball. Yeah. And there's a reason why Jason Kelce, in my view, is the most valuable Eagle of this generation.
How about that? Well done.
Other than Nick Foles, of course.
All right, Sal Pal. I know you are on your way. When are you actually heading out west?
Pat, that's privileged, classified information. So I'm just going to say I'm getting ready to go soon, Pat. I'm getting ready to go soon, and maybe we'll see you after the Super Bowl, but we'll be in touch. Thanks for a great season on This Week in Pro Football. Love doing the show, and it's no surprise to the audience of This Week in Pro Football that Pat Callahan would be skeptical of analytics, the slogan is "Get off my lawn." That is about as old school as you can get.
I guess so.
Thanks for a great season, Pat.
All right, Sal. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the time you took this season. There were great conversations, and I appreciate it very much. And thanks for all the information you provided to me. And we'll look for your stuff with the hated 49ers all next week. And we'll watch the matchup show. Thanks again, Sal. All right. Sal Paolantonio joining me there. He didn't answer me when I asked him if he had. No, he said he just took orders. So I assume he didn't ask to be embedded with the 49ers. I'd rather go with the Chiefs. But okay, when we get back, Sean Green is going to join me. We're going to talk about those two conference championship games again. And then we'll look at some early Super Bowl props. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. But that's not all. They are excited to join forces with another pillar of the community banking world in eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank. Their team of professionals will fit seamlessly into First Bank's culture of dedication and understanding your financial aspirations to fuel your success. With a deep-rooted commitment to eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank stands as a testament to community values and unwavering support. Experience the difference of real relationships and dedicated personal bankers. Connect with any member of the team today at our Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or you can call them directly at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC. At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Hi, welcome back This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you here on a pre-Super Bowl edition as we look forward to, we had Sunday off. We'll have to find something to do here on the East Coast anyway, or the weather won't allow you to go get the golf clubs out. We'll find something to do, and then next week is the end, ladies and gentlemen, of the football season, and then the long off season as we get set for 2024. This guy will help us get set here. The host and proprietor of the Sports Gambling Podcast. That would be the great Sean Green joining me here to talk about some props. And I want him to look back to a couple of questions on those conference championship games. Sean, how you doing, pal?
Doing great. You know what? 10 days out to the Super Bowl. Countdown is on. Let's get it. Yeah, excited.
We'll see if you have any money left by the time the game actually rolls around there, Sean.
Well, it is in Vegas. That's really, asking for a lot of self-control to go out to Vegas to have the Super Bowl sitting there on Sunday. We're doing stuff at Media Row, but then it's like you're just going to be chomping at the bit here to get down on some more action.
So how do you actually get? You said you're going to be on Radio Row, or what they used to call Radio Row, I guess they.
Now it's called Media Row.
Media Row, of course, yeah. But I mean, do you have to rent space, or do you have to? Is it first come first serve? How does that work?
You got to get credentialed, and then getting a table is like Hunger Games. You gotta kind of grease the right wheels or know a company that has a table. I still don't know how we have access to a table, but we will have a table for a few hours Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But yeah, it's a real crapshoot.
Well, let me know when you want me on. I know that you'll want me to be a featured guest on one of those.
Oh,
days.
yes.
Just give me a heads up so I can clear the schedule. All right. All right, Sean, that's the AFC Championship game. Was there any doubt in your mind that Patty Mahomes was going to outplay Lamar Jackson?
No. I mean, again, I was just like kind of flabbergasted a little bit, at least thinking, hey, you get the Chiefs here as a dog. I had them on the money line. I had them with the points, especially. I bet it kind of late, and it was 4.5. That always felt good. I mean, yes, fortunate to force that fumble and save Flowers as he was going into the end zone. But yeah, and certainly Mahomes over Lamar, yes, 100%. But then the other thing is, if you listen to the podcast, my big angle is I thought, Spags had been coaching up some really good defenses and having really good game plans. I thought his game plan against the Bills was very sound, and I thought his game plan against the Ravens was very sound. I mean, he forced the Ravens into throwing Lamar Jackson 37 times. I mean, if you told me Lamar Jackson was going to throw 37 times in that game, I would have bet double what I bet, because that is just not a formula for the Ravens to win.
No. And I went back and looked through my trusty NFL record and fact book. And Sean, 57 Super Bowls to date. I counted 3 running quarterbacks have won them. And even identifying those 3 as running quarterbacks really is a little dicey. Roger Staubach, Steve Young, Russell Wilson, right? Mm-hmm. Every other quarterback that's won a Super Bowl, I'm talking about Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana and even Patty Mahomes, who can scramble, but he's really a pocket passer. They win Super Bowls. So my question here is, I mean, I know the league is shifting now more towards the Lamar role in terms of quarterbacks coming out of college. But do you ever see an instance where they're going to dominate the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think, man, it is tough because on the other side, you have these super athletic defensive linemen, right? That you can't sit back and be a complete statue back there because you're going to get killed. You kind of have to be that hybrid like Mahomes, right? Who is very good throwing the ball, but is, to your point, elusive enough. And even Brock Purdy, had 4 carries for 51 yards. Like, you have to have some baseline running ability, but to your point, it can't cause you to sacrifice the passing ability. So it is that fine line. I mean, look at Josh Allen. He's a really good quarterback. He can run. He hasn't found that postseason success, but he probably you would grade as maybe a mobile running quarterback. It is tough.
I know. I mean, you look at I'm just talking. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, as you point out, 2 supremely talented guys. But as long as that number 15 is in the AFC, they're shut out.
Yeah, I mean, and he's playing well. You have Andy Reid, who knows how to coach him, knows how to scheme up a game plan. And really, that defense has been awesome. It's really kind of, to me, the most underrated storyline of this Chiefs team and the Chiefs season has been how well their defense has played.
Yeah. In the NFC, Sean, the Lions get a late touchdown to cover that number, which I guess was some solace. Obviously, solace to everybody who took Detroit. But give me your overall thoughts on that. I was blasting Dan Campbell for what I thought were 3 terrible coaching decisions. Did you think any of those 3 decisions that he made, the 2 eschewed field goals and the decision to run the ball down 10 with a minute to go, do you think any of those 3 were justified?
So yeah, I'll just look at it from a gambling perspective. You know, I understand the analytics. I understand they had been aggressive, but you know, I think analytics in combination with gut feeling, with how, you know, to me, momentum is real. So, you know, on that last one, if you can tie it up and kind of stop the bleeding from that comeback, you try that field goal. You know, up 14. I think it was a very different mindset. I mean, even you heard Shanahan where he's talking about three scores, getting it from 14 to 17 like they did right before half, and you felt the momentum was locked in. Then they got a field goal, and then you had a chance to take away everything they earned. And I think not only what it does for your offense, I think it gives your defense, which was probably a little bit outmatched. It gives them a little psychological boost. I think there was something to that.
I think you're right. And plus, there were seven fewer minutes on the clock. You're up 17 at half. Now there's 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. You're up 17 again. I just think it was.
Yeah. But I see the counter, like Josh Reynolds was open. He probably should have caught that pass. But again, there's no sure thing you get a touchdown on that drive if you convert the fourth. You know, how much do they trust their kicker? Could he have missed one of those field goals? Sure. Right. But to me, the biggest one is running the ball with David Montgomery and burning that timeout. That's the one that's the most inexcusable, undebatable, just idiotic.
I absolutely agree with you.
Everything else you can have a conversation about. That one's fair.
It's a fair. All right, Sean Green, the Sports Gambling Podcast. Give me some early Super Bowl props that may have piqued your bloodshot eye.
I just mentioned it with the Kansas City defense, and that's kind of my whole lean and viewpoint for this game. I think this Kansas City defense is gonna have a nice game plan schemed up here for old Brock Purdy. So let's start there. In the 20 games the Chiefs have played this season, they've only allowed over 20 points 4 times. So 16 times they've held opponents to 20 or less. You can bet the 49ers team total under 20.5 points at like plus 170. So right there, that's pretty juicy for something that's happened 80% of the time. Now, granted, you know, San Francisco has a good offense, but I think they match up pretty well against them.
That's a good one because, I mean, I don't know. This kid Purdy, he's no Mahomes. Nobody is a Mahomes. Yeah. But this kid does have something. You can see it, something intangible about him. But a Super Bowl, the last pick in the NFL draft is now going to be under center in a Super Bowl. He's got to be a bundle of nerves by the time that game kicks off, right?
Well, and I mean, they're very fortunate to, not trying to diminish getting to the Super Bowl, but kind of fortunate. I mean, they were down 17 points, and then they were down 10 points at least. I forget the number off the top of my head against the Packers. So you don't see that a lot against good opponents where same thing like the Eagles, right? The Eagles kept coming from behind, and then eventually it ran out. I think we could see kind of a similar formula for this 49ers team where they're kind of playing with fire, winning some of these games. I mean, Brock Purdy, he hits the Detroit Lions guy. I mean, Brock Purdy's lucky the ball didn't stick in the guy's face mask, right? Because
I know. It's incredible. If you're a Lions fan, you do not want to go through the things that happened in that second half.
The turnover luck was just so crazy for this 49ers team, and he even threw an interception. I think he's going to throw another interception. So add that to the list of props. Brock Purdy to throw an interception. Yeah. And if you want to get crazy, I do think L'Jarius Sneed could be the guy that gets that pick if you want to get real crazy. But just Brock Purdy to throw an interception, you can still get that at a pretty good price. So I like that one as well. And then on the other side, Chiefs wise, I mean, you can run on this 49ers team, right? We saw it in both games. I mean, they let up 108 rushing yards to Aaron Jones, 93 to Montgomery, 45 to Gibbs. That was kind of like a two-headed monster.
And they should have had more, Sean. They got away from running that ball too. I don't know why they did it. Montgomery was having a terrific night.
I know my whole handicap was, and Lions did cover, but I also did have a small parlay on them to win and Chiefs to win. which would have paid like 10-1, 11-1. So I was definitely licking my chops there at halftime. But my whole handicap was David Montgomery. He is going to be a tough tackle for this 49ers defense. Keep giving him the ball, and I don't know why they got away from it.
I don't know. I spent most of the early part of the show, Sean, with Sal Paolantonio talking about coaching decisions and how you could have 45 great players and 24 great assistant coaches, but if that head coach is not on his A game, you're going to lose. And that's kind of what happened there. One last thing for you. The line right now is 49ers -2, right? Is that where it's sitting?
Yep.
Are you surprised at that, given no offense to Brock Purdy, but that kid on Kansas City is as good as it gets? Are you a little surprised at that number?
Yeah, we'll see if it closes a little closer to a pick 'em. I mean, would I be shocked if somehow Kansas City ends up being the favorite come Sunday? We'll see. I think the public is probably going to say Patrick Mahomes is an underdog. I'm going to be on Patrick Mahomes, which it's hard to really, discredit that. I mean, he's now 9-1-1 against the spread, straight up 9-3, I think, as an underdog in his career. It hasn't happened a lot. It's about to happen 3 times in a row. So it's one of those things, like the line is really based on, these Vegas power ratings and that kind of stuff. So coming into it was kind of what you would expect the line to be, but it doesn't always mean that it's right. And you mentioned coaching. This is the 3rd time the 2 coaches have faced off in the Super Bowl. This is the 4th. Previous 3 times, the coach that won the first matchup won the second matchup. So I think it was like, Chuck Noll was back there. There's a number of them that have like faced off previously. And then the second time, the coach that won the first time also won the second time. So if you're following that trend, looks good for Andy Reid as well.
Very interesting stuff there, Sean. Where does now you'll be all over the place this week. Where does everybody find you and your gang of miscreants as you take over the city of Vegas, and where can people make some money along with you?
Let's go. Yeah. Sports Gambling Podcast. We're going to be starting. We're doing like a bunch of shows, obviously, leading up to Super Bowl, giving out 58 Super Bowl bets for Super Bowl 58. So we'll give out some of the weird props, the Gatorade colors. Right. Then we got a whole episode dedicated to Chiefs props, to 49ers props. I mean, you can find it. This is like 5 NFL games combined into one as far as the betting options. So, and
all that stuff you just described, they can get it at Sports Gambling Podcast.
SportsGamblingPodcast.com, or just type it into Google. Can't miss it.
All right. And please, you're going to have to just find, amidst the debauchery that you're going to be involved in next week, just find the time for me next week.
We'll have
a show together for this year, and we'll get the latest from you, and I appreciate it very much. All right?
All right. Sounds good, Pat.
All right. Sean Green, thank you very much, pal. All right. We get back to some news and notes that I want to hit you with here as we look towards Super Bowl 58. And then don't forget, at the top of the hour, the great Ross Tucker is going to join us for the first time here, and we'll talk about conference championship football and that Reid Mahomes connection. That's here on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
I got everything you need.
Anything can happen when you go live.
I got everything you need. No trouble, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the same. Yeah, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the same.
Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
Fate made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's restaurant and bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan here. Please give me a follow on X at TWIPF Pat. Follow the network here at JAKIB Sports. And of course, make sure you subscribe to Jacob's YouTube channel. All right, just some news and notes here as we get ready to host Ross Tucker. I talked about Dan Quinn being hired by Washington, and I thought that was a very chalk hire by the Commanders, who, as usual, are doing everything last. I'm not thrilled with that hire by Washington, but we'll see if Quinn, who was 5 seasons the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons and went to a Super Bowl, we all know that infamous one, 28-3. We'll see if he can bounce back here with the team. I just don't think is stacked with talent. I think the Commanders have to start. They have to start building some talent on that team. They have not been good for a number of years. Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, is the latest Sean McVay wannabe hired as the Seahawks head coach. McDonald, only 36 years old. And that's what teams are doing now. They want to find that defensive or offensive coordinator wonder kind who's going to reinvent the game. And that's the current flavor. Remember years and years ago was that top college coaches. And then of course, that old boy network. But the old boy network struck out this year. Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick on the sidelines. And every head coaching job now filled, which no one would have predicted. Even though I was skeptical about Vrabel right from the get-go, because I said, Mike Vrabel's, he's going to beat you 17-13. He's going to wear his team out by January. They're going to lose in the first or second round max. And I think maybe some teams size that up. Belichick, a terrible general manager. Sal Paolantonio pointed it out last week. Almost none of his first and second round picks ever even make a second contract. So just a lot of baggage with Bill Belichick. It'd be fascinating to see what capacity he ends up in the NFL in 2024. He's going to end up doing something. It'll be very interesting to see what happens there. All right, some other notes. As I mentioned last week, Reid is now only the 4th coach in NFL history to go to 5 Super Bowls. He joins a very select company: Don Shula, Tom Landry, Bill Belichick. That is rarefied air. And he's also breathing that air in terms of his record in the postseason. Reid is now 25-16 in the postseason. 41 postseason games this guy has coached. His win total of 25 is second only to Bill Belichick's 31. Now, granted, in today's NFL, with all the 7 teams now making the playoffs, there's a ton more postseason games. You can't really compare that number to Vince Lombardi. He had 2 each season. But still, it's impressive. 25 wins in the postseason is impressive. But now you got to ask yourself, and I'm going to ask Ross Tucker this, well, what's the chicken and the egg in Kansas City? Is it Reid or is it Mahomes? We'll see what Ross's take is on that, because Patty Mahomes, I've been lauding this guy all show. 14-3 now in the postseason. 14-3 is postseason record. 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The Chiefs have gone to the AFC Championship game in all 6 seasons in which he was a starter. I mean, that's about it, right? All 6 seasons this guy's a starter. The Chiefs' ticket is punched to the AFC Championship game, and 5 of those 7, they're going to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, this guy is just the real deal. There's just no other way to put it. This guy is, without a doubt, the real deal, and the best quarterback in the league right now. And that's a formidable opponent for San Francisco in my opinion. That they're going to be that is a tough out for the 49ers to have to beat this guy. That's not going to be easy in any way. Over the past two postseasons, Mahomes is 6-0. He's thrown 11 touchdowns, no picks, last two postseasons. And he's taken 5 sacks. And the thing is, Sal pointed out here in his notes to me, is Mahomes just rarely, if ever, generates a negative play. He just does not generate a negative play. How many times do you see a team gets a 1st and 10, next thing you know, it's 2nd and 17? He just doesn't do it. And he gets some breaks from the officials, too. There's no doubt about that. He gets breaks a lot of other quarterbacks don't. But Mahomes, without a doubt, a very, very special guy. And don't forget, the Chiefs traded up to get him in that draft. He was the 10th player picked, as I recall. And you just can't. You make picks like that, and your team is set for a near generation. Right? And just as when you make picks that are awful, your team is in trouble for a near generation. Just goes to show you. You get them right, you're dancing. All right, listen, we get back here. I'm going to be joined by Ross Tucker to wrap up this show. And we're going to talk with Ross about about coaching decisions, what happens on a sideline. We'll get his take on what the Eagles offseason is going to look like, too. We're going to do all that next as we wrap up a pre-Super Bowl edition of This Week in Pro Football presented by Kennedy Ford.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
Welcome back here to This Week in Pro Football on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you as we wrap up a pre-Super Bowl edition. Everybody trucking to Las Vegas for Super Bowl 58. Probably be the haven't been a lot of postseason games in Vegas since the Raiders moved there. I can vouch for that. Because they're in the same division with Patrick Mahomes. When you're in the same division as Patty Mahomes, you tend not to go to the postseason very often. But I'm sure it's going to be an electric week. I'm sure of it as the whole NFL world descends upon Vegas. What could go wrong? There's nothing going to go wrong with this gentleman. This gentleman here that I'm bringing on here for the first time, the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Westwood One NFL analyst, a proud graduate of Why a Missing High at Princeton University. That's Ross Tucker. Ross, how are you?
Great, Pat. How you doing, man?
All right. I appreciate you taking this time very much. I know you've had an exhausting season, and I do appreciate you wedging this in here because I know you've been very prominent in the sidelines too. How is that? I mean, especially those sideline gigs. Do you enjoy that? Do you find that to be obviously you're staring right at the kind of play, the level of play that you were 7 seasons in the NFL?
Yeah, so I don't get to do sideline that often. I really only do it for a couple playoff games for Westwood One. So I think in particular, because of the uniqueness of it, I love it. Because it's like, I only do it twice in January. So I almost forget over the course of 11 and a half months, whatever it ends up being, what it's like to be on the sideline for an NFL game. And I was on the sideline for two great ones. The Lions-Rams, the first home playoff game for the Lions in 30 years was incredible. And then the AFC Championship in Baltimore. And I guess the two things I say are three, I guess, Pat. Number one, I really wish, like if I could snap my fingers, I wish I could have everybody watching, every NFL fan be on the sideline for an NFL game. It's just to see the speed, the ferocity, the collisions. The reality is television just does not do it justice. So that's number one.
Right.
Number two is the atmosphere. It's different. I mean, when you're up in the booth, it's great. When you're down on the field, it's just different. You can feel it. And then in particular, you know, for the AFC Championship game, man, it's really neat right after the game to be able to interview Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And, you know, they're with their family and you know how much it means. I mean, I enjoy seeing the guys with their families enjoying that special moment.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And of course, you're the analyst for the Eagles preseason, which I think you've become. I know you enjoy that. And it's a great way, I guess, Ross, to see those games anyway, to see who's working their way onto the roster and whether some draft picks are working out.
I love the preseason game. But first of all, listen, I grew up outside of Philly and Reading. I grew up an Eagles fan, diehard, right? So like Randall Cunningham, Reggie White, like Seth Joyner. I mean, I could go through the whole defense probably if you needed me to. Like, those are my guys. I love them. And I can remember, Pat, being down at the Jersey Shore and my parents wanting to go out to eat or whatever, and I wanted to watch the preseason game. You know, I was into it. So now I'm the guy that's doing preseason games on TV. So that's really cool. Yeah. And then I tell people every year, you know, like, there's always going to be guys playing in the preseason games that are going to be playing in December and January when it matters. And it happens without, I mean, think about like Eli Ricks and some of these guys that were playing for the Eagles. Like, it happens every year. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to believe me, but it's a very real thing.
Wow. How many times I think it probably preseason did Brock Purdy mop up for the San Francisco 49ers, and now he's got one of the two most prominent roles in the National Football League next week. But let's start the AFC title game that you covered. What I focused on with Sal Pao earlier in this show, Ross, was coaching decisions and how the coach's thumb on the scale can really make or break a game. And I was shocked at how the Ravens got away from running the ball. How do you see, how do you think, was that something the Ravens were consciously going to do going into the game, or did circumstances dictate that all of a sudden they abandoned what was the number one run game in the NFL?
You know, only they can answer it. But if I were a Ravens fan or certainly a player, that would have really bothered me. And not that they didn't run it more, but just that it didn't feel like they went down playing their game. You know, I thought they were the best team in the league, Pat. You know, 2 years in a row where I feel like the Chiefs have beaten the best team in the league. I thought last year the Eagles were the best team. They beat them in the Super Bowl. This year I thought the Ravens were the best team, and the Chiefs beat them in the AFC Championship game. It's interesting because today on my show, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, I had the great Greg Cosell from NFL Films over in Mount Laurel, and he came on my show, and he pointed out that 63% of the snaps for the Ravens, they had three wide receivers on the field.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, first of all, that's not them. You know, they're a two tight end or a tight end fullback team. Secondly, you could argue the best part of the Chiefs defense is their corners. Jalen Watson, L'Jarius Sneed, certainly McDuffie in the slot. And I think the receivers are the worst part of the Ravens offense. So why are we putting more of our worst guys out there to go against more of their best guys? That doesn't make sense. I mean, just think of it logically. It doesn't make sense. I don't know if it's because the Chiefs had those two long drives early in the game. I don't know if it's because, who knows? You know, maybe it's because they were down 2 scores at halftime. But no matter how you look at it, to me, it's just weird, really weird that happened.
Ross, in this era in the AFC, and by era I mean the era of Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson as the dominant quarterbacks in the AFC. The only two that have made a Super Bowl are the two, what I'll say, drop back quarterbacks. That is Mahomes and Burrow. What does a game like last week tell you or say anything to you about like a Lamar Jackson who's consistently been unable to raise his game once the stakes narrow in January? I mean, is there something about being a predominantly running quarterback that just doesn't translate into conference championship game football?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would tell you, I mean, I think Josh Allen, even though he's remarkable as a runner, I think he's a drop back quarterback. And I thought Lamar had a good year throwing the ball. I actually thought one of my criticisms, Pat, was that they didn't have more design runs for Lamar Jackson. What they have won the whole game. Now, it needs to be said, it's one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. Yeah. I mean, given the situation, given the circumstances, you're down 10. I think it was second down. You cannot throw that ball. Like, what is he doing? Just inexplicable error. And I'm convinced that these guys just make these mistakes against the Chiefs now. It's like they're the Patriots now, where guys just do things against them that they, out of character, they don't do against other teams.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It really was, Ross, because let's face it, Lamar Jackson had not been in that position almost all season long, where he's dropping back and playing as a drop back quarterback and trying to figure out whatever the Chiefs were doing defensively. No, he was improvising. He was making things happen. They were scheming plays around him. And then all of a sudden they stopped doing it. It's amazing. Now, in the NFC Championship game, you are familiar with the Lions because you did cover them the week prior when they beat the Rams. But in the NFC Championship game, I've been attacking Dan Campbell all night because of those, I consider, 3 terrible coaching decisions that he made. But what I want to start with you on is this, Ross. You've been on NFL sidelines. You have stood there. You've watched your teams play games and win games and lose games, whatever. What goes on an NFL sideline amongst the players when the Lions go from up 24-7 and all of a sudden it starts to unravel? What is going through the heads of those Lions players when it goes from 24-7 to 24-10 to 17-24 and all of a sudden they're losing?
Depends on the guy. Some guys start to get real angry and start yelling and tell guys to get their you-know-what together. Right. Some guys kind of get these looks on their face like, uh-oh, this is not good. It's why I laugh when I hear some of the analytics folks. And by the way, I'm a huge proponent of using data to make more informed decisions. But when they say there's no such thing as momentum, that's laughable to me. I mean, at any sport, whether it's conscious or subconscious, it's a real thing in my mind. And so, you know, when the momentum's going against you and it kind of snowballs and it's almost like it's contagious, Pat. It's weird. It's like it's contagious. And so what happens is there's some guys that kind of go into a shell. There's other guys that get angry, and there's other guys that are just like, man, I got to do something to try to switch the momentum back.
Right. That's fascinating how that happens. It's just something to watch it unfold. And you're right. All you want to do is put your hand out and say, stop it. But it just seems to snowball upon itself. Now, you mentioned the analytics part. I had a debate with Sal about this earlier. And tell me something, Ross, in your opinion, is there a difference in analytics between Dan Campbell, say, in October at Soldier Field, deciding to go for it on 4th and 2 versus the Bears, and Dan Campbell in an NFC Championship game, down 3, going for it instead of attempting a field goal that would have tied the NFC Championship game late in the 4th quarter?
Well, so that's an interesting question on multiple levels. So the first thing I would tell you is the decision, if the circumstances are identical in October and January, the decision should be identical if they're identical, but they rarely are. Right. And so that's why I've always wondered about these decisions. Like, here's what I would say, Pat. Let's talk about the first one, okay? Because the first one was the one that bothered me in the 3rd quarter. Does it just say 4th and 2 at the 28?
Right.
You should go for it. Or do they input into the data that their kicker Badgley has not been great in his career in the 40s. Is that part of it or not? Is it just 4th and 2? Okay, and then next thing, does it take into account that there's 7 minutes left in the third quarter and that the Niners are likely to get maybe 4 more possessions? Right. Does it take into account that it's the difference between a 2-score game and a 3-score game? That's the part that bothered me, because if you flesh it out, right, even if Reynolds catches the pass and they convert, there's still a pretty decent percentage chance that they're kicking a field goal anyway. And even if they get a touchdown and they go up 21, it's a 3-score game. They make the field goal right then, 3-score game. In other words, to me, the upside of going from maybe up 17, up 21 is not worth the downside of not converting it and only being up 14 still. I would have definitely kicked the first one. The second one's a little bit different in my mind when you're down 3, because they couldn't stop San Francisco at that point.
That's
and the goal is not to tie the game. The goal is to win the game. And so to me, I kind of understood that one, because it's like, kick a field goal here. First of all, maybe 50-50 that he makes it. Secondly, even if he does make it and we tie it, then the Niners get the ball. They're going to come right down the field anyway. So like I can understand the second one more than the first one. And Dan has admitted that at the end of the game, running the ball on third down was just horrific. I mean, that's the one that's unbelievably unacceptable.
Yeah. Boy, you're right. You are right about that one. And that one will haunt him, I think, for 6 months, Ross. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the Lions come out of the gate in 2024, lugging that chain around them. It'll be fascinating to see. All right, Ross, I'd like to turn, by the way, check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It's excellent. And your hits on X are always outstanding. I urge anybody to get on there and find Ross Tucker, at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, let's talk about the locals here for just a couple of minutes. First, I wanted to get your take, because we haven't spoken before about how a 10-1 team ends up where the Eagles ended up. Again, you've been a player, you've been there, you've observed sidelines, you've called games. What do you think happened to the 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles?
They lost their confidence. They lost their swagger. And I'm not sure how or why. I don't know if it was just the way they got beat down by the 49ers.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the combo of that and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
They never really got it back. And it's like they lost their stinger, man. I mean, you got to play, and I don't know why, because they got a lot of really good veteran players, and there was no shame in losing those 2 games. And then I think you could argue they panicked. You know, when they made the move from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia, I think you could, players know when something unusual is going on.
Right.
And if you make a move like that, players get the sense, like they're not, like they don't believe in what we're doing. They don't believe in us and what we can do here. Yeah. And whether that's conscious or subconscious, I don't think it's a good thing.
That's an excellent analogy there. You hit upon what I had said too. I think the losses to San Francisco and Dallas, which for a veteran team should not have unnerved them, but I think the beatdowns did. And I think you're right. You're right about what you said about the coordinator's job too. All right, now it's an unsettled offseason in Philadelphia. Tell me your thoughts on the 2 coordinator hires that the Eagles made this year. Is it a notable step up from the guys who started the season in 2023?
I think so. And I would say this, it's interesting, Pat. If they hired these guys a year ago, I would have said home run, grand slam, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was foolish that the Cowboys got rid of Kellen Moore. And everybody would tell you Vic Fangio is a top 5 defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Now, the shined a little bit off those guys based on this past year. I thought Vic was okay with the Dolphins, and Kellen Moore, it didn't go particularly well with the Chargers. But these are guys that in 2021, Fangio was a head coach.
Right.
And Kellen Moore was interviewing for the Eagles head coaching job.
Right.
So to get those guys,
to
me, they're like high quality blue chip stocks that might have come down a little bit, and the Eagles are buying them low, hoping they'll go back up.
Buying him cheap, I guess, huh? I'm not sold on Fangio. His record over his whole career is like 77 and 91 in terms of wins and losses as a DC or as a head coach. But I think it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how the Eagles do coming into the gate. Where do you see them, Ross, in terms of their most pressing needs? I mean, obviously, defensively, there's some glaring needs the Eagles have. Where do you think they need to concentrate the most in the draft and free agents?
Well, that's a really good question. The first thing I would tell you is they need the D linemen that they've drafted recently to really step up next year. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, the 3 Georgia Bulldogs. They need those guys to play like first-round picks.
Right.
I think I'll be curious to see if they take a corner high, because they have some young guys in the pipeline, and Eli Ricks and Keely Ringo, that have shown some potential.
Right.
So there is some potential that they would draft a linebacker or a safety higher than they ever do, but I doubt it. It's not
anyway, it's not in their DNA.
What they are. Yeah, it's just not who they are, unfortunately.
Right. Well, but it's right. But you concentrated on the defensive side. Offensively, Sal Pao has talked about, Ross, I don't know if he has officially retired or not, J.C. Kelsey. I know he apparently told his teammates that he was, but I don't know if he's put his papers in. But if he does, that's a spot the Eagles really have to focus on, is that center position. Is there anywhere else on the offense, for instance, running back, that the Eagles need to focus on?
Well, so I think they'll move Juergens to center. I think Steen will be the right guard, and I think they'll be in pretty good shape there. I think they'll probably draft a guy second or third round who has guard tackle versatility to push Steen and to be the next guy behind Mailata and Lane Johnson. So they'll probably draft a guy that Stoutland likes second or third round, would be my guess, depending on how the board falls. Wouldn't be shocked if they draft a running back with like a 4th or 5th round pick, something like that. That seems like their style. Right. They got an interesting situation coming up at wide receiver, because they need a good third receiver.
Right.
Because they play 11 personnel, 3 receivers a lot.
Right.
And because when they lose one of those guys to injury, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, you need somebody else to step up.
No question.
But also, Devontae Smith is going to want to get paid here, and they got to figure that out, because it's tough to have 2 receivers making way over $20 million a year.
It's an excellent point. Excellent point, Ross. That's a lot of investment in your wide receiver position, and he's going to want to get paid. There's no doubt, and that's going to be a very interesting thing to look at for the Eagles. All right, Ross Tucker, I've taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate you taking this time. It was a fascinating conversation, and I hope you'll allow me to add you to the roster here of those that join this show when we come back again in 2024. And I want everybody to check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast and to follow Ross at Ross Tucker NFL on X. And are you heading west? Are you part of the?
I will. I'll be there all week doing my shows, the Even Money Betting Podcast, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. But then I'll come back before the game. My daughters have a daddy-daughter dance next Friday night. Can't miss that.
Well done, old boy, doing that. Ross, thank you very much for taking the time, and I really hope to talk some more football with you throughout the 2024 season. All right.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Pat.
All right, Ross Tucker joining me there. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you enjoyed the whole show, because I thought it was pretty good. Next week, I hope I could squeeze Sal Paolantonio in our Super Bowl show. Sal's going to be very busy, as he mentioned, so I might not have him, but I do have Ray Dinger joining me next week. I got Ed Werder from ESPN will be joining me too. Sean Green, of course, will be back, and we'll squeeze in 1 or 2 other guys. So please join me next week for our Super Bowl show this week of Pro Football. Thanks very much to Xander Kraus for producing tonight. And don't forget, give me a follow at TWIPF Pat on X. Let me know what you think of the show. And look forward to talking to you again next week on the Super Bowl edition of This Week of Pro Football.